All right,
Okay.
man.
All right, man.
What's up, brother?
Great to
Good to
see
see
you.
you. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Ready to take on Monday. Ready to conquer the world, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, y'all, again for tuning in. This is episode number 4 of our Light Up Life podcast. For today, we're going to dive into a bit more of a tender topic, but one that I feel is going to be very relatable, fortunately and unfortunately, for many men out there, but also many women out there, and many people who identify within their given or selected identities. And the topic is that of growing up without a father.
Yes.
Something that you and I can relate with, can resonate with, and something that you and I, in the work that we do, I am sure we have heard countless of stories of young men or again young women who have had that shared experience. And so, yeah, what are your initial thoughts as we're going to do our best to share a combination of stories, some statistics, and some perspectives around that experience?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's obviously an apparent issue, I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of communities, but most of the communities that we come from that
Mm-hmm.
look like our communities and our neighborhoods. There's, like you said, statistics that are going to support sort of the cons,
Mm-hmm.
right, of growing up in a single parent household.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I'm just interested in sort of getting more information about how you felt about certain things,
Yeah.
because, like you said, we went through a lot of similar situations, and none two are going to be identical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just happy that we get the time and the space to share a lot of these things, and hopefully even come back with more of an understanding of what it could be like as well from somebody else, because maybe you went through something that I went through, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
exact same thing, but you feel completely different about it.
For
And I'm just
sure.
interested in like knowing your perspective on that and what you've lived through,
Yeah.
because once again, although we're cousins and although we talk very often, we're very conscious of the conversations that we're going to talk about on the podcast, because we wanted to keep it fresh and new
Mm-hmm.
information to each other. And this is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I have two questions.
Okay.
I'll start off with the first one, which is that of us honoring the space to check in. And so I just
Yes.
want to ask you how you're doing, how was your weekend, and maybe what's something you're looking forward to this week.
Yeah, so and I've been doing really, really well. In continuation to a couple weeks ago, just trying to work on sort of stabilizing my life and stabilizing myself when it comes to a professional career. I'm in the dating world, so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm being very cautious about that, but also very optimistic. Like I feel like, that's going very, very well as well. And the family and everybody's doing very well. So I'm in a very happy place right now,
Good,
right?
good.
But it did take a little bit of shifting with a
Mm-hmm.
few things. I went to physical therapy class today, and I felt really, really well. My physical therapist noticed a lot of improvement,
Good.
so that makes me feel amazing and super psyched about going back into the gym and doing some of the
Mm-hmm.
regular things and some new things in my just everyday routine. Um, yeah, I'm just pumped with where I'm at right now. And this past weekend, we had a pretty successful Earth Day event with Moving Forward in Urban Tilt. Urban Tilt is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, nonprofit out here in Richmond. They're an agricultural
Mm.
nonprofit, but they help so many other organizations, including Moving Forward. They're actually our fiscal sponsor.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so we're heavily involved with, well, they're heavily involved in with
With the
us.
work they are doing, yeah.
And yeah, and just there was a ton of people that came out. I met a lot of great new people. I love to see the youth get involved just whenever they can. Whenever I see them out, it just adds a different
Mm-hmm.
layer to what community work looks like and what it can involve.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing them have fun and just normalizing just being out and just contributing, so that they
Yeah.
don't even know that they're out there actually, like, quote unquote, picking up trash.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They're having fun in the sun, and sharing time and space with other young
Yep.
children. So that was the weekend. And that's where I'm at, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no. I love that last part of having our youth contribute to this work, which is that of beautifying their communities, right, or through the cleaning up of their communities, and also just being around those different organizations, right, that are also trying to give back and contribute. I think it can lead to these young people, as you said, developing a sense of responsibility moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and continuing to give back and seeing that it can be a fun experience, right. I think
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, but when you think about community service, it's like, I gotta go do something, right?
Right.
Versus I wonder who I'm going to see there versus
Yeah.
like, oh, it's going to be fun. I'm going to get some sun, right? I'm sure they're going to have food that they're maybe giving away or maybe some swag I can get, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as an adult, I'm actually always excited for the t-shirt I'm going to probably get for whatever, from whatever
Bro, I'm wearing
organization,
one right now.
from whatever
Birthday.
organization is like hosting it or putting it together. Cause I'm
Yeah.
just like, this is going to serve as like a physical memory of me participating in that experience with those other amazing people that were there in that space.
Yeah, definitely. And just for those who are ever interested in going out, coming out and, getting involved with any organization, just give me a holler and I'm sure I can connect you. There's tons
Mm-hmm.
of different ones. Like, for example,
So
Rich City
many,
Rides,
yeah,
they do, there's a specific term for it, but bike rides.
yeah,
They
and they
ride
fix
out,
bikes too.
they fix bikes, right, for free.
Mm-hmm.
They actually also do give bikes away for those
Yes.
who need bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So Rich City Rides does amazing work. Like I said, over Tilt does a lot of agricultural work. So if you're ever wanting to get into like gardening or just interested about just growing your own vegetables and things of that
Mm-hmm.
sort,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're definitely the people for it.
I mean, that's the move, man. Like with especially with how expensive groceries are getting. Like
Yeah.
if you can learn how to have your own garden
Yeah.
outside, which has your veggies, your fruits, like
Mm-hmm.
you're now not having to rely
Right.
on having to go buy it at the grocery stores, and you know what you're putting into, right, your
Right.
vegetables and fruit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
there's so many positives to that.
yeah, one thing that a lot of people, I know we'll get back to the
Yeah,
topic, I promise. But
yeah,
one thing that a lot of people
yeah.
actually mention is that the empowering
Yes,
feeling of sustainability,
yes, that part.
right? Like
Hmm.
the fact that they can now, like you said, they don't have to rely on the supermarket or whatever wherever they get their vegetables. Like, there's a bit of that human instinct that sort of just just human nature of being able to fend for yourself kind of
Hmm.
thing that just
Hmm.
goes off. And I hear a lot of people mention that. So,
Yeah.
just another thing.
And last thing I'll mention on that is I think it's also important to be able to develop those skills because some communities fall under the term of food deserts, which means that there's not like grocery stores with healthy options available or grocery stores that are conveniently accessible, right? The reality is when you grow up in low income communities, impoverished communities, you're more likely to see a bunch of liquor stores
Oh
with
yeah.
alcohol, with chips, with unhealthy food options versus that of a place where you can buy fresh vegetables, right? Fresh fruit. And we know that what you put into your body contributes to how you feel,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's
Heck yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
But for the sake of kind of wanting to get back to some degree with our original
yeah.
lens, I wanted to ask you
What's up?
somewhat connected, no, yeah, very much connected to this topic. Although we grew up without a father,
Mm-hmm.
if you could pinpoint and highlight a male figure from within our family, so
Mm-hmm.
Theo's, yeah, a Theo from maybe somebody else's dad, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
you felt modeled some characteristics, personality traits, or values of what you would have wanted your father to have modeled. I know I
Got
have
you.
someone that comes to mind for me, but I want
Yeah,
to see.
yeah. It's, man, now that I'm older, because this is something that I never really thought about growing up. I like a male role model
Mm-hmm.
was something obviously that I didn't have, that I could just tap into just casually around me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna push back because I want to make this very, very true to my
Mm-hmm.
case,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there wasn't necessarily just one person. There were quite a few, and they came in different phases of my life.
That's fair.
Because not one, I want to say, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because I understand life now,
Yeah.
right? How things
Yeah.
kind of happen, but not one kind of has been there from like the beginning to like where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
So, growing up, my uncle, my tío Loncho, was definitely one
Mm.
one of them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the thing about that is that he wasn't the best
Yeah.
role model. Whether that be just role modeling how to be a grown man or a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what he did do was keep me active, right? He actually
Yeah.
was the one that introduced me to soccer. So in his own way, he
Mm.
taught me how to play. Like I remember the first few lessons he gave me, and immediately me thinking like, I'm already better than you,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, it meant a lot to me as a kid, especially growing up in San Francisco and playing at that time, to have him around, just to tell him like, to ask him like, hey, did I do good? Did I,
Mm-hmm.
was I moving around enough or whatever? So my uncle was definitely one. He took me fishing a lot, so he taught me a lot about
Mm.
just being out and just doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. And patience, because fishing requires patience.
Patience, man, and but with that being said, and once again, just to make this sort of my truth, and to kind of give more information out, like my uncle was dealing with a lot of
For
things.
sure.
He
For
was dealing
sure.
with substance abuse. Like I remember, going fishing and it being 5 in the morning, and he's doing things that people don't usually do at 5 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And but I never thought that it was anything wrong at that point because he's my uncle.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older, now I kind of get even personally what that actually can do to
Mm-hmm.
like people around you, right? Um, and then I've had just I want to say like just all my cousins, like, and it's funny because we're all in the same age, but
Yeah.
say Tony and like even Alex and
Mm-hmm.
even Danny,
Mm-hmm.
like looking at them kind of go through things a year or two ahead of me, 3 or 4 years ahead of me, really helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
And especially there was a huge gap where there wasn't any real male grown up role model that I could actually lean on.
Mm.
I want to say from like late elementary to maybe like early high school. Like there was this huge gap of me not really having somebody around that's a male that was either a dad
Mm-hmm.
or that was like doing things that are positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I leaned a lot on cousins and people of my age.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I want to give definitely thanks to like all of y'all,
Mm-hmm.
you, Tony, Alex, Danny, like I mentioned. So, Mateo Alfredo was always there,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't necessarily somebody who I ought to go and talk to or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. But I still want to give credit,
For sure.
because he was always just lugging us around in that
Man.
station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
um, but that's that's my truth, man. Like I
Yeah.
can't really give somebody, one person, like the um the credit, I guess, to be like, yeah, man, you from the get,
Mm-hmm.
from the go until now, it hasn't been like that way for me.
Yeah, 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 for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. I think for me, and forgive me if perhaps I may have framed the question a little confusing. I was looking at it more so from us having grown up without a dad. Um, and so, of course, right, because of the many responsibilities any of these people would have had, I think it would have been a Superman type effort to have been in our lives from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
But the person, and you mentioned them, but then you also brought up someone else that brought a smile to my heart and my face, which is my tío Loncho, because I remember us being in your backyard playing football, right? And he was like the
Yeah.
quarterback, and he was having us run
True.
routes, and he's the one who actually instilled my passion for the San Francisco 49ers,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you. And I keep getting my heart broken, tío Loncho, because we can't win it all, man. But the other one that you mentioned was, which is who I had in mind, was that of our tío Alfredo. And
Yeah.
of course, right, disclaimer, I wasn't in that household in his family, so I don't know what all that entailed, right?
Right.
But
Right.
what I do
I get that.
know is that I had such a joy and appreciation anytime he would come in that station wagon that you're referring to and picking us all up. And there's like six of us in the back seat,
Yeah.
and he's taking all of these baseball gloves, these
Mm-hmm.
baseball bats. Like those were some of the best times in my life because I didn't have that anywhere else. And there was no male figure ever picking me up to go do that. And not only was he picking me up to go play these sports that I loved, right, and took me away from what the real world was, right, which was poverty, which was growing up in a single parent household, which was a lot of these other things that weren't so positive. When I was out there, he was also taking me to be with y'all, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of this interesting connection because you said because we were so many of us around that kind of like maybe 3 or 4 year like difference of an
Mm-hmm.
age, but we all could run together, play together, wrestle, whatever it was, right? And I don't know what inspired him to care so much about trying to bring us together, but within the capacity that he had, I felt like it was often.
It was, yeah.
And again, growing up without a dad, it's clear that he didn't have to do that,
Mm.
right? Because our dads clearly didn't even have enough
Yeah.
time for just us. And here he was, like, engaging 8, 9 kids, right?
Yeah.
Tavari, Alex, Tony, Sammy, you, me, like
Your
Robbie would
brother,
tag along,
Robbie.
bro. And it
Yeah.
was that's I guess that's kind of where my question was coming from. Of course, I never had a heart to heart with my tío Alfredo,
Yeah.
right? I have not had a conversation with him in years, right? But he's a man that if I were to see him today, I wouldn't be able to help but smile because the
Oh yeah.
only thing I would think about would be him taking us to Marina Bay Park and me diving in the grass thinking I'm King Griffey Jr., right?
Man. Yeah.
And he would hit the ball perfect, bro. He would hit it where it would slice and you had to
You would
run
have to.
and you had to dive, right? Like it
Yeah.
was so much fun. And there was like 4 of us diving at the same time.
So many highlights,
Oh
man.
man. So
Yeah.
so forgive me if like the way that I gave the question, because I see the way that you may have interpreted was like from then to now. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, right,
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree. Nobody's been there
Yeah.
for me either from that time to now. And so that's why I think the focus more for me was like even in little pockets who displayed like
Yeah.
those characteristics.
Definitely, yeah. So definitely to Alfredo for sure. But now thinking of it and you kind of explaining a little bit more about like one of
Mm-hmm.
your focal points. I want to give it up to and I don't know why I didn't think about this the first time around, but Juan Alejandro,
Mm.
my coach playing soccer. So
Mm.
he actually was, yeah, pretty much the one that instilled a lot of structure in my life, obviously through practices, right? Tuesdays and Thursdays, every day at 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
But not only was that sort of what I felt was a mandate because I wanted to get better and stuff at soccer, but he taught me just a ton of different things, right? He used to yell at me like crazy,
Mm.
and he taught me how to take a punch, right? When in like figuratively,
Yeah.
right? Like he would kind of get on me on a lot of things. And now thinking of it, now that I'm older and a little bit wiser, it's because he knew that I could take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And immediately I would go to immediately I go to Manny, immediately I go to like other people, like, bro, he's on my tail right now. Like, we need to step it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he knew. Like, I was a
Yeah.
captain for the team for basically like the whole time it was even like established, and that taught me a lot as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, him and sort of his tactics. He didn't have kids back then. I remember many times very vividly him actually claiming us as his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that always felt really, really well. Kind of a
Yeah.
strange feeling, like
Yeah,
I'm
for
not your,
sure.
like I'm not your kid, but then
But
it
he's
felt,
playing the role of like that male figure though
yeah,
that's teaching you leadership, accountability, responsibility, resilience, like the list could
yeah,
go on and on.
work ethic like crazy,
Yeah,
man.
right?
Yeah, a lot of the things that I do now, I directly contribute to just me playing soccer, and he's
Yeah.
obviously, sort of a main character in that story of mine in that arc. So definitely Juan Alejandro, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
appreciate you sharing. Yeah, coaches, shout out to all the coaches out there in all different type of sports areas that genuinely love and care about the growth, about the just like commitment that is made when you're a coach towards your students, towards your whatever it is that you're teaching and you're helping,
yeah.
right?
The importance of it, right? Like, if you go into coaching, and this is, first off, shout out, like you said, to all the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go into coaching just wanting to do the X's and O's, you shouldn't be in
For
coaching.
sure, for sure.
You shouldn't be in coaching.
Yeah,
There's a lot more. There's a
yeah.
lot more to that.
There's a human element.
There's a human element. There's the fact that you're not only responsible for, or I guess it depends what age, but responsible for having to develop and manage attitudes and
Mm-hmm,
emotions and
mm-hmm,
characters.
mm-hmm.
But you also do have then the responsibility to shape and mold the minds
Yeah,
of
yeah.
these younger people. Um, and yeah, for me, it played a very very intricate role in my life, man.
I was
Yeah.
watching this podcast and it was John Wall. It
Oh yeah.
wasn't a coach, but it was his mom who said, "You want to be remembered as a better person than a better athlete."
Yeah.
And I think what the reason why I brought that up is because you're highlighting how as a coach, yes, you may be competitive and yes, you may want to win, but don't forget that like you're molding the minds and the personalities of these young people too, right?
Yeah.
That will exist beyond their sport career, which for many will end shortly
Mm-hmm.
after their time with you,
Right.
right? So you want to hope that as they transition into whatever is next in the world, you contributed to some very translatable skills, mentally, emotionally, that they can take with them to continue to be a better version of themselves outside of that sport.
Absolutely. That's a
Yeah,
great quote from
yeah,
Miss Wall.
yeah. That was
Because
really cool.
it's the truth, man. Like there's 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 a lot of opportunity for men to do good, and then there's also a lot of opportunity for men to do
Harm,
bad, right?
yeah,
To do harm.
mm-hmm.
So for those that are out there just trying their best to keep their minds sane enough to coach or teach,
Yeah,
man, my hats off to y'all.
yeah,
You're in it, so you see it every day.
yeah, for sure.
You just mentioned that you've had a few interactions lately with young men,
Mm-hmm.
and the best kind of interactions, right? Those
Yeah,
unplanned kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
unexpected interactions, and I'm sure that you not only rose up to the occasion, but you did a great job in those interactions, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was just such a pleasant surprise. I think their ages were probably 21. Aiden, shout out Aiden. Easter, he goes by Easter, 18, and then Marcel, 17. And what I loved is all three of them displayed this willingness and desire to connect in a genuine way, right? All of them were through basketball. As you all know, I'm a basketball just enthusiast in all ways, shape, or forms, playing and watching. And in the process of me being at these jams, I've come across these young men. I don't know if it is that they see the work ethic or they see the drive and they want to gravitate towards that, or they see the positivity, right? As I was sharing with you, even when I play against people, the type of person I am, especially if I'm winning, and I always hope it doesn't come off in this sarcastic way, but I actually cheer on the person I'm playing. I'm like, yo,
Oh
like,
yeah.
don't give up, like, keep going. Because ultimately, I want it to be a closer game, so I have to push myself, right? So there's a little selfishness on my side.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
I want a
Of
challenge,
course.
so
Yeah.
hit that shot, so you're back in the game,
Yeah. Make
right?
this fun for me
Yeah,
too.
exactly,
And that's
right.
that's fair.
And so I think it's a combination of those things that allows them to see like, oh, this dude's different, And mind you, a lot of times I'm wearing apparel that shows my tattoos as well, right? Which there can be so many preconceived notions as to what someone's
Right.
personality is going to be like if they're tatted, right? I have my chest tattooed, all my arms tattooed. And so I'd imagine there's a little bit of this, like, oh wait, he's pretty cool. Like
Right.
he's good at this, but he's supportive towards me, like trying to beat him. Like I try to give them a different experience than maybe they're used to within the realm of competitiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
There can be a healthy competitiveness. Because don't get me wrong, I'm still trying to beat them.
Of
Like
course.
every time.
I'd be mad if you weren't,
I'm
man.
still trying to beat them every time. And I'm trying
Yeah.
to beat them bad, right? But I still want them to feel like they gained something outside of just playing that one-on-one with me. And so when we dove into those conversations, I couldn't help but have my heart feel full that they were willing to be so open about who they are, where they come from, some of the stuff they've been through, which is why I actually wanted us to highlight, or not highlight, but use this episode for this topic, because this was something that came up in regards
Mm-hmm.
to that of like father figures and them not being around all the time,
Yeah.
which again, you and I can relate with. And so I want to transition into another question, which is that of, can you recall the earliest moment in your life where you noticed, like, wait, I don't have a dad, and
Yeah.
this is different?
Yeah.
It
I
could have been
can.
at school, could have been on the soccer field, like but it sounds like you know, so go for it.
I do actually, and yeah, you know how people always ask like, where were you at 9/11?
Uh huh.
9/11
Mm-hmm.
happened. Where were you at when you first found out that freaking Y2K was
For
gonna
sure.
happen?
Mm-hmm.
Like these like colossal moments in American
Yeah.
culture or just history.
Yeah.
People always can recall these kind of things, and I think that the first time that I actually noticed it, it was so monumental and so very vivid. So it was a Saturday game at 10 o'clock
Soccer field.
at the soccer for the Booker T. Anderson Field, which is close to Kennedy. Like
Got it.
it's right behind Kennedy, and we were playing the Watsonville Chivas that were coming in that day. And I remember kind of going through like the paces in my mind. Like there was this one guy, I forget his name, but he was obviously the best player, and I kind of already knew that Juan was going to come and tell me like, "Hey, you got to lock him down,
Mm-hmm.
marca personal," which means I'm just going to be one on one
One on
against him. I
one.
was a defender, just basically just lock him down so that the rest of us can take care of you know,
Yeah.
can take care of the field, of the game, and so I'm kind of just walking around, like warming up, and then I just kind of turn and I see two people, right, and their dad. So Manolito and his dad, and then Lalo and his dad, and they were just kind of chopping it up, like
Yeah.
in the group, like they were just. Just the dads were kind of talking to them and just telling them like, hey, vamos a ganar, vamos a echarle todo and this and that,
Yeah.
no se rajen and stuff. But but the fact that they were just kind of in a group, for some reason, I feel excluded. Even though I know that if I would have gone,
Welcomed
they
you.
would have welcomed me.
Yeah.
But that was like the first time where I felt like, holy crap, I ain't got nobody to
Like
tell me
who's the
this.
person to give me my pep talk?
Right.
Yeah.
My mom was there, my auntie was there, but
Yeah.
my mom, bless her soul, I know she had just as much fun going out to the games as I did most of the time. She was off with like the moms and
Yeah.
stuff, and they were
Yeah.
talking, and they were always the loudest.
Bro, your mom would get into it.
Man,
I'm like, she
she
about to run
is,
on the field and go
bro. That's
put on a uniform herself.
it was intense to be her son a lot of times. But when she got together with like Berta and like Manny's mom and all these moms, they would just be super loud, but kind of in their own
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
The dads were really the only ones that actually were there
Like
for like the
engaged.
game.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
They
Yes.
knew about it.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
if I was to ask my mom right now what position I played, she wouldn't be able to tell me.
You
Right?
running around. That's all I
Right. She
remember.
was like, I don't know. Allá atrás, andabas atrás. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I was technically. You're right.
Yeah.
But like that was the first time where I felt like,
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
looking around, kind of feeling like, yeah, this is a little awkward, but not really so awkward. And then immediately went into just me going back into soccer mode.
Yeah.
But that was the first time. That was the first time.
To dig a little deeper, what do you recall, if at all, you feeling in that moment? Because right, you
Yeah.
you have the logical observation, right, which is,
Mm-hmm.
oh wait, who am I supposed to talk to?
Yeah.
But what can you recall, if anything, was the emotional, like, feeling in that moment?
Yeah. I definitely remember feeling awkward.
Mm.
I felt like not only did I not have somebody, a dad, right? But I felt like just for maybe a few minutes, maybe for like a minute or two, feeling not like I don't know where to go physically
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
Like I don't know where to like. Should I start warming up more this way?
yeah.
Should I give them their
Mm-hmm.
space?
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of like up to me to break that feeling by going, like I said, into that group conversation? Is it really my place to? There was like a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions, but more than anything, I didn't know what to physically do with my body.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
could very much see that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was strange, man. It was really really strange because I've never had that before. I never had it. Never had a feeling that strongly before about not having like a box.
what was your understanding of it before that moment? Like, clearly you saw that there was not a physical presence of a father figure, and I'd imagine at this age, right, you're conscious enough to know, okay, other people have dads, other
Mm-hmm.
people are being picked up by their dad. It's interesting how that moment was the moment for you,
Yeah.
but those dads had probably been around before in other games or practices or whatever the case, right?
Yeah.
So what was your understanding, or what was kind of your thought process around just you not having a dad before that moment?
Yeah, so definitely they had been around for years, so
Yeah,
I knew the dynamic was always there. So it
yeah,
wasn't even like it was anything that was drastically
like
new.
new, yeah.
Um, but I think one thing that I want to know that one thing that I always felt when it came to just not having a dad was not man, I just didn't feel much, man. I,
Yeah,
I really
yeah,
didn't think
yeah.
about it all that much. And I didn't start to really analyze a lot of things about me until way later,
Hmm.
till I was in like my mid 20s,
Got it.
when I was kind of forced
Yeah,
to think about this kind of stuff. But for the most part, my whole childhood, I never really cared too much about it.
yeah,
Never cared too much about it.
yeah,
Didn't seem to need a dad.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, in your situation, you had your older sister Erica, who
right.
was very present and an active figure in your life. You had your mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
had your grandma, and not that any of these individuals should have ever felt the need to replace your dad, although I'm sure they did their absolute best. I think there was enough energies in the house, right? You're like, I can't
Definitely.
imagine another person coming in,
No,
you know?
it's funny. It's like when growing up and having a few thoughts about like my mom ever getting with somebody else.
Hmm.
Like I always thought, like, how do we fit another personality in this house?
Man,
Like
yeah,
it's just with my mom, it's a lot. And then growing up with like Angelica, which is my younger
younger
sister,
sister, yeah.
my youngest sister. Um,
That's right. You're the
that
youngest.
I'm the young,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm the
So you had
youngest.
two older sisters. Yeah.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
right.
It would kind of like I would actually feel bad sometimes. Like, man, if anybody were to come into this house,
Like I pray for
I
them.
pray for that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Even though I always wanted my mom to eventually find somebody.
I love that. I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I still hope so.
Yeah.
But that never happened. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't think like if that were to happen, I was like,
Hmm.
man, it'd take somebody with tremendous patience.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what about you? Do you ever feel like um, you had a lot of thought in with not having a dad growing up? Like, was that something that was top of mind?
So it's interesting, right? I feel like you may know, but who knows if you remember some of these things. But my mom had me at 24, right? I was the oldest. And right, 24, when you come from a whole different country, in my personal opinion, you're like at least 3 years kind of delayed, maturity wise, mentally wise, regardless of who you are, men or women, because you've had to assimilate to a whole different culture, society in
I
this
see.
country,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I share that to give my mom just a little bit of grace too, because at 24, my mom was very much like still going to the club. My mom was still going
Yeah,
out on holidays. And so,
but she loved to dance too. She
yeah,
said
no,
that.
yeah,
So
she's such a social butterfly.
yeah.
I mean, man, that lady will be the first on the dance floor if given the opportunity. But the reason why I mentioned that is because my mom explored dating a lot through my childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had me with my dad, who didn't stay in our lives. But then she met shortly after my brother's dad, Andrew and
Andrew.
Jasmine's dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kike, if you may,
Oh
may
yeah, yeah. I
remember
remember Kike.
Kike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was in our life for about like 2 years, I would say, before their relationship didn't work. And then he ended up, transitioning out of the household. And so at that point, my mom was raising me, Andrew, Jasmine in our house, and on the weekends from time to time, Kike would come pick them up, right? So then I'd
Mm-hmm.
kind of be by myself a lot of the times. But then my mom was still trying to date, right? And so she brought different people. I have so many different stories, man. I have one of the, I don't know if it's normal, but I have really great memory. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing when I need to remember something, and it's a curse when I'm trying to
that's
forget
how it
something.
works. Yeah.
But I'll give you a quick little story. She was dating this guy named Willie. And mind y'all, I struggled a lot in school, and I'm just going to give the story for some comedic sake of this very heavy topic. I struggled a lot in school, so I'd lie all the time about like not doing my homework or whatever. I lied a lot about that type of stuff, and my grandma would help me with my lies, right? So my mom knew that. My mom, she wasn't a fool.
Right.
Um,
Sitting by the bit.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And this bit me in the butt literally one day because she was on this date with Willie. They were literally on the couch just like us, and I wanted to be a part of kind of like the experience. They were watching a movie, and I was on the ground doing my homework. And shout out to Willie in advance as you hear the story. So out of nowhere, I tried to get up and I couldn't get up, bro. And I was like, whoa, I just felt a sharp pain in my side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try again. I can't get up. So I'm telling my mom, like, Mom, I can't get up. I can't get up. I'm like fourth grade, right? Fourth grade around that time. And Willie's like, algo tiene el niño, ¿está bien? And my mom's like, no, este niño no tiene nada, es que siempre anda mintiendo, a lo mejor,
Oh,
eh,
she caught you crying wolf. Yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And whatever, and I'm like, no, mom, I can't get up. And Willie's like, no sé si creo que lo debemos de recoger y a lo mejor llevar al hospital. So my mom was like, mira, si no tienes nada, cuando regresemos,
Te doy un
yeah,
chancletazo.
vas a ver que sí te va a doler algo, right?
Is this when your appendix?
Yeah,
Okay,
bro. So
dang.
my appendix
Yeah,
was about to blow up, bro.
yeah.
So shout out to Willie, who was one of the guys that she was dating. They didn't date too long, but man, I'm glad he was there, bro,
Right. He would have
because she
left
would
you.
have
She
left
left you
me
on the
on the
floor.
ground, bro.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because I've heard people who have had their appendix taken out say that the doctor said the same thing. So I don't know if it's just something that doctors say, but according to the doctors, if we would have made it there even 5 minutes later, I might have not made it. But I've had now a bunch
Mm,
of friends who have had the same experience and they have that same line. So I
yeah.
don't know if doctors have been trained to just say that to parents.
5 minutes. So, it's funny because like in Dragon Ball, and
Yeah,
we'll get back to the topic
for
once again,
sure.
just to keep on sort of the comedic sense. In Dragon Ball, like, they're famous for the 5 minutes of Dragon Ball. So that
Mm,
5 minutes of Goku kind of transitioning from just a regular Saiyan to
to
Super
Super
Saiyan
Saiyan.
was like, I think it's like 6 episodes long.
Oh my
But
god.
back then,
Yeah.
that meant that it was about a month and a half because you
Yeah,
had to wait
bro. You had
week
to
after
wait.
week to, so yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that it must be like a Dragon Ball 5 minute. Like, how long are
For
those five
sure. Yeah,
minutes for
what are we
real?
really talking about? Was it really
Yeah,
five
was it
minutes?
5 minutes?
Because yeah, we went to the Richmond Kaiser, but they don't have an emergency room there, so they took me to the Oakland Children's Hospital. So I ended up being over there. But
Yeah.
so yeah, so your question was, how did I feel not growing up without my dad? I think it was I had a unique experience because I had a bunch of stepdads, right, or had
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of men kind of coming into our lives. Again, my mom was searching for love. Knowing my mom then, knowing her now, she's just always been this hopeless romantic, which I feel like I got from her unconsciously. Um, but I think the challenge was within my situation is that I saw my mom date a lot of men who were very unhealthy towards her.
Mm.
A lot of people don't know this. It's not something that she shares openly. And mom, I hope that you trust me to share a little bit of your story from my point of view. I saw them like mentally abuse my mom, verbally abuse my mom, physically abuse my mom. And it was tough as the oldest, right? The man of the house, but I was a boy and I felt so powerless, even thinking about going up against these literal men,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was very layered. My experience of growing up without my dad, I would see him maybe like once a month at times, and then it would turn into like once every 6 months, and then it turned to like once a year. So it just was very complicated. But for me, my story or my feeling of like really noticing it for the first time was also on a baseball field. And I think it was like after one of our games, I played in the San Pablo Little League. Um, and I think after a game we won, and like the dad was just like super proud of his son, like put him in his shoulder and everything. And I was like,
Yeah.
damn, like that looks really cool. Like I wish I had that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like moments like that you will never forget.
Definitely not. Like, in this, it's constantly like, a lot of people don't know this. Well, I'm sure that people who grew up without a father can relate to this, but there's always movies and stuff
Yeah.
where like the dad's always
Mm-hmm.
super happy and, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, throws him on his shoulders, um,
Playing catch.
playing catch. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just rewatched The Sandlot not too
Mm-hmm.
long ago, and like
Mm-hmm.
their little scene in the back, like where he was trying to teach Smalls how to play
Mm-hmm.
catch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we had that, right, through like uncles and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Coaches. Yeah.
coaches. But there's been times where I've wondered, right? I don't think it's ever gotten to a point where I felt like, very very strongly. I felt very very strongly that it's something that I needed.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
been times, a lot of times, where I felt like it would have been kind of cool
Yeah. I
to have that.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Right. Like in these movies, you also see like the son wake up on a Saturday morning, just like look around his room, get up and run to mom's and dad's bed and jump in their bed. Right. And
Yeah.
like waking up mom and dad, and of course they're annoyed, but like that son or that daughter who got a chance to do that, like they're that must be such an amazing feeling,
Heck yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so again, for those out there who share a more similar experience to John and I, just know that it's normal to have those curiosities, to have those wonders. It's normal for you to have your own pinpointed moment in life where it clicked for you of like, damn, I don't have like that father figure in my life, that biological father figure, right? Because I
Right.
do think there is a difference. And of course, right, I've
There
also
is.
heard stories of people say, well, this person raised me from when I was little, so this is my dad and no one else will be my dad.
Mm,
And there is the biological part, right? Which
mm,
means you might look like this person, right? You might sound like this person. Like your mom might even say stuff like, "You're just like your dad," and you're like, "I never met this man. What do you mean?" Like my
right.
mom to this day will still be like, "You remind me a lot of your dad." I'm like, "How?"
Right.
Like,
Right.
I did not grow up with that man, but according to her, I have very similar characteristics.
Yeah, and like in my case, because I get that I got that a lot growing up. It was actually very uncomfortable, and I really
Mm-hmm.
didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so my dad, they called him frijol, right?
Mm,
And like around my family, I'm sure you've heard this before, but
yeah.
sometimes people would call me frijolito,
Yeah.
like little,
Yep. I
like
remember that.
frijol is bean, and then
Yep.
frijolito is obviously it's little bean.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was times where I'd go play in San Francisco, get a little bit older, like people would know me
Mm-hmm.
through because of
Through.
him, because
Mm-hmm.
apparently my dad was very, very good at soccer, right?
Mm.
And
So you're playing the sport,
I'm playing,
bro.
and
You
it's like
know?
there would be people that would come up to me and be like, "Yo, you look just like your dad," and that would bug me for a
Wow.
while.
Yes.
And then like I'd play, and they'd be like, "Yo, you're better than your dad, and you're this." But I was always compared to somebody who I didn't know,
Really not yet at
and
all.
who I was then kind of forced to think about
Mm-hmm.
um,
Without you wanting to, right?
without me
Like your
wanting
consent.
to.
Like they were throwing that into your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it got to a point in a lot of different situations where it bugged me just because I was so trying so hard just to kind of come and be my own person,
Yeah.
right? And just being a teenager and trying to be the best player that I could, now being compared to somebody whom, and let's be very realistic about
Yeah.
this, left my family
Yeah.
in at the very least, a financial hardship, right?
Mm,
Um, and even though I have nothing against my dad or anything
yeah.
like that, like I mentioned, a lot of growing up, I didn't really feel like
Yeah.
I had or didn't have or should have had or needed a dad. But the truth is that things would have been easier at the
Yeah.
very least financially if he had
Financially, yeah.
contributed that way. So that sits doesn't sit with me well. So when things like that started to happen more consistently, like especially playing out in San Francisco for a while, it started to get under my skin a little bit.
And that
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense, right? And forgive me for interrupting you. It's just I couldn't help but want to just like validate what you were saying of that feeling of like now I'm having to think about this man, and
yeah,
I think the reason why that was impacting you is because you had no desire to be thinking about him in that moment, right?
mm-hmm.
Soccer was supposed to be your outlet. Soccer was supposed to be something that you had fun and that you enjoyed. You didn't need people to be bringing up someone that clearly wasn't in your life at that moment in time,
Yeah,
right? And
definitely.
who knows? I mean, the reality is, right? Who knows how that might have impacted you on the field on that given day or
It
that
messed me
given
up.
play, right?
It
Like,
did. It messed me
because
up.
I'm
Yeah,
imagining you're referring to moments where you were young, right?
yeah.
Like, what is around the age range that you remember these things
At
starting?
that time, I was 16, 17.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. Trying to make sense of it all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of growing into your own young manhood, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you've navigated that without a consistent male figure in your life, right? So then just to kind of hear this commentary, it's like, bro, like I don't need that right now.
Or there was one specific time where I was out warming up. Mind you, this is like pre iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was iPods at that time, but I didn't have one. So when I'm warming up, like I'm not plugged in.
Yeah,
I call
yeah,
it the Matrix, right,
yep,
where you have your headphones in and you're
yeah.
kind of dialed in. So like I'm warming up, and they're like, this guy that's like, "Hey, frijol, frijol," and I'm like,
Mm,
"Who the heck is this cat?"
yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
that I just don't even
Don't
know,
even know. Yeah,
And he was like, "Hey, yeah, frijol," and he was like, I think I think he might have been drinking that day or
yeah,
something,
yeah. I was
but it
already
it just
thinking.
threw me off, bro. I was like,
Yeah,
man, who is this cat, man? Like,
yeah.
why does he feel the need to, you know, mind you, he might have not known that
For
my dad
sure.
was never in my
For
life. He
sure.
might not.
And
He
that's
might not
fair.
know
That's
anything
fair.
that's going on
I
like
thank you for
in my
bringing
mind.
that. Mm-hmm.
But it bugged me,
Mm-hmm.
and it did throw me off my game to where like it was something that for some reason made me want to show out more, and that's not my game.
Mm-hmm.
My game was always just to. I was always more of a distributor and
For
a
sure. For
passer,
sure.
but that game for some reason I was like, I'm gonna for whatever reason
Yeah.
show out,
Yeah.
and that wasn't my game.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, and one thing that I do want to talk about now that this is a topic and stuff
Mm-hmm.
are for dads who have been disconnected from their children and stuff, um, because a personal experience of mine was that my dad tried to reach out to me like
Mm-hmm.
just recently,
You shared that with me. Yeah.
and it was tough. Like it
Yeah.
was really really tough to a point where I just left a message, kind of just sitting there. Um, but I I obviously don't understand what that can feel like as a dad who's been disconnected. But I promise you one thing is
Yeah.
if you don't try and you let time go by,
Yeah.
it will get harder.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
will get harder.
Yeah.
Um, for the simple reason that it'd be just more time for that person to establish themselves, and by doing so, you're not in that
Yeah.
establishment.
Yeah.
All right. So you're letting that person kind of grow in their own way, and obviously that's gonna make them grow further and further away from either wanting to or even thinking about you
Yeah.
or anything.
Yeah. And I think the other layer is the unknown of, if I open this door, will it even be a helpful experience? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, due to their absence, you've just had to navigate a lot of manhood on your own with obviously some maybe now mentors, role models, friends, peers, whatever the case may be, but not with your dad, right? He hasn't been present. He hasn't been a part of that picture. He's not a puzzle piece within your experiences, and so um, it's like, okay, I am who I am now. I'm really proud of who I am. Forgive me. Um, how could this potentially impact me if I let this person back into my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's no guarantee that it's going to be a positive. What one could
No,
hope in an ideal world, kind of fairy tale type of world, but it sounds like you really don't know him.
I don't.
Yeah,
Not from can
yeah,
of paint,
yeah,
and it's like I'm okay with it now.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so just to support sort of my previous comment. Like now that so much time has passed by, and like you mentioned, I've kind of you know manned up,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I don't mean that in a
In a like a
traditional way or
toxic
anything
way. Yeah,
like that. I'm
yeah.
just meaning that I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a man. I identify as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's more of a, well, what really, for what
Yeah,
now?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
um, and sometimes I think of his position and maybe him thinking like, well, if I do come into his life, am I going to mess things
yeah,
up?
for sure. And
You
there,
know,
that's the flip side, right?
right?
And I love that you said that, because you have the right to feel the way that you feel, and no one should ever take that away. And knowing you, I know that you're open to at least having things put out there to consider, which is even that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you never know, John. For all you know, this whole time, him not reaching out has been his way of not wanting to disturb or take you off the path that you clearly have been on,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the wild thing about like life, right? We never know what the true intentions or thought process or what the heart really has contributed to why people do or don't do certain things, right?
Yeah.
There's a world, there's a reality where maybe he's been like kind of peeking into your life here and there and being like, I don't bring nothing of value to him, I'm not going to do this. And in some ways, that might be like such a beautiful way of displaying love by not wanting to fuck up your shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't mean you got to open the door just because you can see it from that standpoint, because we don't know if that's really the case either.
Right.
But I think it's important to at least acknowledge that could be the case.
Yeah, and it's a delicate dance.
Yes.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
very delicate dance, and I think one thing that we talked about just right before this podcast started filming was sort of what's best,
Yeah.
right? Like, is it best to be present and sort of be somebody who isn't necessarily contributing to
Mm-hmm.
your life trajectory, or
To be absent.
or be absent, right? Or be present and absent at the same time, if
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
any
yeah. What
sense.
kind of goes back? Yeah, that's another one, right? It's
All
like
right,
be present, but you're like a very unhealthy present,
all
right, to
right,
your son or your daughter. Be absent and you're just nowhere to be found. Or you're present physically, but mentally you're disconnected.
right.
Emotionally, you're gone, right?
Yeah,
All of those can have its own unique impact on the child, right?
yeah, and it's such a crazy thing to think of because I mean, obviously, anybody's just gonna know. Well, maybe not anybody, but for the most part, somebody's just gonna know one side of it,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know, I would now think that having somebody in my life who is a male figure would have contributed in my life positively.
Yeah.
I've seen it enough now
Mm-hmm.
so that I know that it's not only happening all around us a lot, but it's I've seen it to you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've seen how you handle you know it with your you handle being a dad with your twins,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I see more good than bad out there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it's even now like growing up, like just people who I know who are dads or fathers, right? But not necessarily like there for the children.
For
I tend
sure.
not to even associate with those people anymore, just because
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't do it.
It's, and I think it's hard for you to empathize with that, knowing your own personal experience, right?
Yeah,
And knowing that they know you and your personal experience, and right, of course, that's not going to dictate how they move, but for that not to at least move a needle for them to think to themselves, you know what? I know how it was for my boy John. I mean, heck, even maybe for them, they might have grown up in that
right.
same kind of
That's actually
experience,
yeah,
right? And so for them to also not be a part of the child's life, it's what I wrote here. It becomes a cycle, right?
yeah,
It becomes a cycle, this very unhealthy cycle. And those who are most suffering are the children,
yeah.
right? And to kind of honor something we said that we would do, what we found on the web, and you know the web can have all different type of information, so forgive us if it's not 100% accurate, but what I was able to find is that around 23% of children growing up are growing up in single parent households, with the mothers being the present parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And some of the reasons, some of the main causes are a combination of divorce, right?
Right,
A lot of
right.
times when divorce happens, it can be very messy, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of clean divorces. Then there's custody battles, right? That within the divorce, there's a child support aspect. So there's so much that goes into that divorce process. Incarceration, right? Which we
Yeah,
know our prison systems are made up mostly of black and brown men.
yeah.
And when we talk about single parent households, it is black and brown men or black and brown women who are growing up without their fathers.
Yeah, and I will add on to that the
Mm-hmm.
incarceration part. I read or maybe heard in either an article or a podcast that more than half of the men who are incarcerated who are black and brown come from
Yeah.
parent households.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's the cycle,
Right.
right? You're growing up without a father. It seems to increase the likelihood that you're going to go to jail. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's also the possibility that that same man might have like got someone pregnant or had a child right before they
Yeah.
went to jail, right? So now there's another kid who's going to grow up in that same dilemma,
Mm-hmm.
experience, pain, you know, confusion state of like, where's my dad?
Right.
Right. So there's so many layers to it. You know, historically, I think we also want to acknowledge how men of color have just done such like hard labor type of work, and have literally worked their bodies to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
right? And who knows how that has potentially also impacted the dynamic between the relationships between them and the mother of their children, right?
Yeah.
Something that I want to speak on from firsthand experience, as you can see my hat, I am a father of two, a proud father of Lilo and Imelda, my twin girls, who I love more than anything in this world. And if you watched our last episode, you would have seen that I communicated that me and their mother are currently co-parenting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in some ways, it breaks my heart whenever I have to drop them off and I come home. Don't get me wrong. At times, I know I need to give myself grace because I have them quite a bit. I'm a very active father in my girls' lives, and so I do need a break here and there because when they're with me, like it's me a lot of times, just me with two very energetic toddlers. You know, the
Oh, I hear
terrible
them in the
twos, the
background. Yeah.
tremendous twos. That is real. It is fun and it is exhausting at times too after at least 16 hours a day of spending with them. But I say that because I want to just also communicate and encourage anyone out there that before you bring a child into this world, that you really dive deep into all the serious topics, conversations around parenthood, around conflict, around what are we going to do if the XYZ happens. It is not to set your up, is not to set yourself up for like worst case scenario. Is to proactively prepare how you will handle any and all things that come at you.
Mm-hmm.
I have apologized to the mother of my daughters for not having maybe thought about everything that it would entail to bring a child into this world, to be married, to be young within that experience, right?
Yes.
I know historically, like black and brown folks, and maybe more specifically brown folks, get married or have children at such young ages. But I'm a part of a different generation,
Right.
right? And I
Very
think
true.
my generation, and I don't say that as a cop out or to justify me and her not working out,
Mm-hmm.
but I say it because we do deal with different societal pressures. I'll even put it out there, different societal like temptations. Like I'm
Sure.
just gonna be very candid with that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And mind you, the mother of my twins knows everything. So there's nothing that hasn't been said in the conversations that I haven't taken accountability for in regards to why our marriage didn't work. But the
Sure.
one thing that I promised her, and I promised her this before we had children and then afterwards, and we went through our situation, I will always be in the lives of my daughters
Yeah.
because I will never let my daughters experience what I experienced.
Right.
Which is why, even as a kid, I share this sometimes jokingly, but also seriously with people. I remember being 14, 15 at the K and John F. Kennedy in class daydreaming, and I was legit daydreaming of having children
Yeah.
at 14, 15,
Yeah.
bro. Like, I'm a teenager, a kid, and I'm thinking about what it's going to be like when I'm a father because I guess in some competitive way, I was like, I'm going to be the dad that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I strive for that every day, bro. Like every day, I'm like, all right, what could I do better? I like assess my week with them. Like, okay, I'm gonna try to change this up. I'm gonna try to do this. But the way that I know that I'm doing a good job is my girls love to laugh. They love to smile.
Yes,
They
indeed.
love to give me a hug, like randomly, bro. And it just fills my heart, and it makes me actually feel bad to some degree for all of those absent fathers because they missed out.
That's
They
good.
missed out and they're missing out right now if right now they're choosing not to be in their child's life. Look, whatever is happening between the mother of your child or you, don't let that stop you from being in your child's life. Now, I know there are some things like legally that may be out of a man's control,
Sure.
right,
Sure.
or a woman's control. I want to acknowledge all of these different components, but I'm speaking from man to man. If you have access to your child, go give love to your child. Now, if you're not in a good place mentally, emotionally, you're going to bring them around dangerous things and unhealthy things, then stay where you're at. That's fair. I
Mm-hmm.
will give you that grace. But if you have it in you to spend time with them and to love them in a healthy, safe way, go do that. Stop letting your pride, your ego, your selfishness get in the way of not being in the lives of your child that you contributed to bringing into this world, because there will be a day where you're going to look back and wish you would have done that more. I promise you. In raising my daughters actively, there's no more fulfilling feeling in the world than doing something that brings them joy and laughter.
Yeah. And I'm gonna add on to that.
Yeah.
If you, for whatever reason, aren't there mentally, financially, whatever, work on it.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
have
Yeah.
either one or two or three major reasons why you should. And I promise you, even though you may not be living the life that you think you may be living or whatever it may be, whatever excuses you build in your head,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I think when you have children, you have the responsibility of a life,
Yeah.
then they do start to become more like excuses than
Yeah. Yeah,
anything,
for sure.
right? Because you have that great responsibility. So if you're not in a correct place, if you're not, say for example, man, if you're selling drugs or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
bro, cut that out.
Yeah.
The time is done.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
come, it's gone, done.
Yeah.
Get to a place where you contribute to your seed, to your offspring, to your family, heritage, whatever you want to, however you want to consider it. It's time, man. It's and
Yeah.
it's fleeting, right? We're only gonna have just a lot of just a few opportunities to cultivate and make these great
Yep.
moments,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're young.
Yeah.
But one thing that frustrates me a lot is when I see, once again, this is not going to go just to men
For
or
sure.
parents who are like, kind of, how could I say this? There's been a few times where time has always been the issue.
Yeah.
I don't have
I don't have time.
time.
Yep.
I can't because I work and I do this and I do that. And it's like, no, you've got time.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's just stop it.
For sure.
We're all adults here.
Yeah.
Like we all understand and have a concept of time.
Yeah.
You have time.
Yeah.
Make it, do it the right way. Let's just stop. Just cut the fluff out.
Yeah.
And let's just do what we have to do.
Yeah.
I don't have children, right? I
Yeah.
don't have any real responsibility of some kind of life. Like even now, Crucitos now getting on my all the time and stuff like that. I don't even have to walk him or anything like that anymore. And like it's just it bugs me when I'm not doing something, and I'm not trying to pump myself up
Yeah.
here,
Yeah. Yeah.
but if I'm not doing something, like whether it's editing, whether it's something with moving forward, whether it's something with work, and I can only imagine the amplification that may have if I have a child, right? Like, how is it that I'm not going to be able to contribute time to a practice, to a rehearsal, to I don't know, taken to the park? If I feel the obligation now, the inclination to do certain things that really don't mean that much, you know what I mean? Like it's just wild to me, and I think forgive me if I sound like I'm
No,
going
you're
on a
good.
tangent
You're
here, but
good.
it does bug me. It does
You're
bug me a lot.
good. You're good.
Yeah.
And again, right, I think this is why it's so important to talk about, because we're not just giving these thoughts and feelings from a random place. We're giving it from having grown up without a father
Yeah.
ourselves, right? And now I'm having the chance to give it from a place where I am raising two little girls actively in the way that I wasn't raised by my dad, right? And I think another thing that I just want to make sure, and this might be the last thing I say on behalf of this kind of little segment within this larger segment, is if you justify why you don't have time and you're working so much, it's like, well, I want to buy them the new Jordans. I'll cut that out. Your child's not going to remember that.
Nope.
They're not going to remember the Jordans. They're not going to remember all the toys you bought them. Don't get me wrong. You can still buy them things. I'm not saying don't have things for your child. I'm not saying dress them up in whatever, right? But go to Marshall's, go to Ross, go to TJ Maxx. That, like, it'll be cheaper and there's still very stylish stuff there. But even beyond that, just remember that what your child will most remember is whether you were there or not, and whether they felt loved or not. That is what they will remember. I've seen enough videos of people having gone to therapy, and it's like this open kind of like share of what they communicated in therapy and experienced in therapy. And a lot of these kids that grew up with all the money, all the nice jewelry, all the nice clothes, they said, I would have traded all of that in the world just to have spent more time with my dad at the park, him coming to my recitals, whatever. I would sacrifice that big ass house that he had us live in if I could have just seen him more. Because at the end of the day, all of this can be taken away, and it will be one day or another. But what can't is the way somebody makes you feel.
Yeah.
When you look at them, when you see them. That's why I said that I know as much as I want to get better, I give myself grace in knowing that I'm doing the best I can now. Because when I go walk, like to pick up the girls, and I enter that door, bro, the fact that they drop everything, and there's videos, I'm not making this shit up. There's videos, they drop everything and run to me and say, "Daddy," bro. Like I just won the NBA championship, the Super Bowl. I won it all in that moment.
Yeah.
All of them. Like that euphoria that those players must get when they win. I know I feel that or greater when my girls run to me with a smile on their face, bro.
It's amazing. And and it's like, we're obviously coming from a place where we didn't have that. Like I never had like, hey, daddy. So we do feel very passionate about this. This is something very personal to me for sure, and I'm sure to you as well.
Yeah.
So give yourself the chance.
Yeah.
That's it. Just put yourself in the best position, just like you do with work, just like you do with anything. Give yourself the chance by working on yourself, and that's really it. You can't after, if it doesn't work or whatever. Say if your kids grow up and they just end up not liking you, that's something different, right?
You can live with that if you really feel like you tried your best. Like you can look in the mirror and you say, I tried my best. And if you are a young father, old father, whatever age you are, and you're feeling like there's room for growth for you, and you're wondering, well, how do I achieve that? How do I know if I'm doing that right? Surround yourself with other fathers that you know are doing a great job, right?
Absolutely.
If you want to be a better athlete, surround yourself with better athletes. If you want to be a better scholar, surround yourself with better scholars. If you want to be a better father, surround yourself with better fathers. And the dope thing about today's day and age, as much as I, see the pros and the cons of technology and social media and just all of this, there's groups, there's Facebook groups that I'm
Yeah.
sure are like fathers support groups,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
You could probably Google father support groups and you might find an address near you where fathers are getting together, no different than another like community of circle of people who are going through different things and they're talking about those experiences. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are spaces, and I know that it's not always right in front of you. But clearly, what's in front of you isn't really working either. So you're gonna have to like go out and find it, like we've talked about on all the different episodes we've kind of covered so far.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So that got very, passionate.
Yeah.
I hope that you all know that we're never gonna want to feel like we're giving directives and telling people what to do. But there are moments and times where we would be doing a disservice if we didn't have some level of just like, um, again, passion and assertiveness
Yeah.
within what we are encouraging. That's what we're doing, encouraging, because we can't control you at the end of the day. We don't have the capacity to hold everybody's hand and walk them to these places or make you be an active dad. But if you clearly are still watching this means this is important to you. You're probably thinking about this in some way, shape, or form.
And I hope that's the case. And I hope that you guys can think that with us sort of having this podcast and talking about these certain topics, that we also do feel an obligation to or an accountability
Yeah,
aspect
yeah.
to get better at the
Future
things that we
and
do.
future generations
Yeah.
of yeah children.
Yeah, because I mean, I want to be the best dad
Yeah.
that I can possibly be, and maybe I'll look back at this, and maybe I'm feeling down that day, maybe I'm not feeling too hot, or whatever it may be, and I have to look back at this episode and kind of hear my words, my
Mm-hmm.
own, hear your
Mm-hmm.
words, and find encouragement in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's really what it is, right? An
Yeah.
encouragement. We're
Yeah.
encouraging you guys to hopefully be a better parent if you're not already a better parent, or the best parent you can possibly be, and just to bring value to our society as a whole,
Yes.
right? I think
Yes.
just to bring all this back together, you mentioned the cycle that a lot of our families have and a lot of our communities have. Let's go ahead and break that.
Just break
It's
that.
just a
Yep.
different day,
Yep.
right? The typical household may not look like it used to before, right? And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
mentioned that, right? Like now we're a different generation.
Yeah.
There's different definitions for what a family can or will look
Look
like,
like yeah.
and that's absolutely fine. But I think that at the end of the day, what is black and white is whether you're going to be there, be present, and be proactive and be positive, dad or mom, or you're simply just not.
Yeah.
And that's hopefully what we projected today.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I couldn't have said that better, so I'm not even going to restate. That was beautiful. That was powerful. Thank you for
Thank you.
stating it in that way because you're right. You're either there or you're not.
Right.
There's
Not in this case though.
there's no middle ground for
There
that.
isn't. No.
Yeah. But thank you all again for tuning in to Light Up Life, episode number 4. We hope that folks out there learned something, related, resonated, or were inspired or reinvigorated within that of being a parent. Last thing I will say is that not only will you contribute to your child's life by being present, you'll probably become an even better person than you knew you were capable of ever being by
Mm.
being present. So believe me, you're probably
Amen.
going to gain just as much, if not more, than your child by being there.
Amen.
But yeah, that we just want to close it off. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, bro.
Yep.
All right. Whew. We could have gone another 3
Oh
hours.
yeah, bro. Like that.